Okay, so now we have our character walking in place for 25 frames. Let's play it. Let's see how it looks. It looks okay. The only thing that I would like to add now is a little bit of translation, right? And we did this in biped. So first of all, to avoid a little glitch, since we're repeating the first and last pose, let's remove that last pose, last keyframe, by setting 24 as our final frame. That way, the first one, instead of repeating, which creates a little bit of a gap, then you have it going endlessly, okay? So once you have your frames to 24, with your main node selected, the biped 01 is usually the one you will have. In this case, it's called Guy. Let's go on the motion tab over here, and under the parameters section, let's go to biped, the biped section here, and go save. And we're going to save this as a walk, and it's going to save as BIP. So I have it here, walk, and save. Okay, so what we just did is we saved that animation so that we can next import it to our biped rig as a little clip or a little animation. And then after that, we're going to set up a dummy object to have our biped follow that dummy object to translate that walk. Okay, so that's one way you can do translation for a walk using biped. So let's start with, I'm going to open now, cancel. I'm going to open my initial file to start with just a plain rigged character. And let me find it right here, new character rig. And this is the character without any animation, okay? We have 100 frames, that's how we started the walk lesson. We click play, there's nothing on it, you see? It's completely not animated. So I am going to go on the select the guy node. I'm going to go to the parameters section and expand the biped apps. Let me click here to collapse the assign controller section, and let's go to that mixer section. And there you can bring other movements that you want to bring. So I'm going to put my time on 0, and I'm going to right click over here in the first layer there, and I'm going to click on new clips from files, and I'm going to bring that walk.bip file we just made, leave everything as default, and 0. I'm going to close this, and as you can see, our character is already assuming a pose of change, right? So let's play it, and there's our walk. The only problem is that he stops because we have 100 frames now, right? So let's repeat that over time. Let's go mixer and bring it again. And as you can see, it does the same. So I'm just going to kind of tie them up there at the last frame. And you can always move it a little bit more or less to make it seamless. And as you can see, by frame 50, he continues walking, and then he stops. So I'm going to bring that file again a couple times and move it. And as you can see, he continues to walk until frame 75, and I'm going to bring him once again, right click, and bring that walk file. So I'm repeating the process, and now we have, let me close here. Now we have 100 frames of animation looping with the one clip that we just created. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So the next thing you're asking is, well, what happens? I want him to, now that I have that created, I do want him to move forward, right? We animated him from this perspective, this angle. So what I'm going to do is pretty much create a helper. So let's go create helper dummy, and let's click click and drag in front of the character to create it. It doesn't matter how big. It's just something that we're going to move forward in the y-axis to give him some direction next. Okay, so then I'm going to go parent, or just simply link the main node to this dummy helper that we just made. Okay, for that I'm going to go on wireframe mode so that is easier. So I'm going to go on the viewport default shading and going to go wireframe override. Oops, sorry about that. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now we have a display issue here. So with our guy selected, let's click on the select and link node. So I'm going to click right there on the dummy, and I mean on the biped 01 or our guy node, and I'm going to drag over to that one box we made. Okay, and you see that the little line disappears. Let's test it. Let's move that, select the move tool, and let's move it. Let's see. It is now everything moves together. Okay, so now the last step is to set up excuse me, let me position back to the other position that we were before. Okay, so let's go back to default shading. So on wireframe mode, select default shading, that you can see the character now. So we're simply now going to just determine from where to where he's going to walk. Okay, so on frame 0, I am going to start with set key over here. So let's go on frame 0 over here and activate set key. When you do that, you're going to see a red frame on your window on the perspective viewport, and also a red line on the timeline. So set the key, click that one with the set key, and you're going to notice now you have kind of like a color key over there. And if you remember, our first walk was 24 frames, right? So let's go to frame 20, well actually 25, but we can do it on 24. And just translate your walk about maybe that much, and set another key. So now our character is successfully moving forward. Okay, so you could go as far as maybe click and drag this all the way to 100, and in 100 maybe determine, you know, how far he goes. Maybe he goes over here because it's quite a few steps, and set the frame. So you can set that last frame any place you would like, and it will still work. You see that it still follows the character. Okay, now we have to do some tweaking. Notice how the feet kind of probably walk faster, are walking faster than the character should. So right there on frame 0, let's update that. So, oh no, let's go on the frame 100. So I'm going to move all the way to frame 100, and I'm going to make him go off screen and update that. And this is the node for the eyes. You can key that separately so that it follows the character. So now it seems to still need a little bit of work, right? Let's let me just for the example, so that I don't have to be zooming out on the viewport, set another key at frame 24 so that you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so that way we don't have to zoom out from the viewport. The first thing we need to do is we need to determine, you know, how far away you want to move the character. So I'm going to keep tweaking this until, you know, probably moving forward from frame 0 to 24. I am going to remove this frame for now so that you don't. I'm going to right click, delete selected key, so that he stops there at 24. We're just testing at this point, okay? But this is pretty much what you're going to do until the end of your animation. You're going to test it. Okay. Let's do shorten the timeline so that it's easier to follow. So let's make it 24 frames, right? Time configuration. Change length to 24 and press OK. Now we only see 24 frames, so we're seeing our first you know, movement, the first cycle. Okay, so let's take a look at the feet. The feet are sliding a little bit more than I wish it would. So let's go to the with the dummy selected, let's go to the graph editor, track view curve editor tool. And what that does is gives you a representation of your curves, and I'm just kind of putting it here so that you can see them both, of the movement that you just created. Okay, so the notice that the curve that changed is this one. That's the one that we're going to focus on, and that is the y-axis. You see it has the same color as the y. That's a good way to remember. So is the Y position. I'm going to select it over here so that I don't have all the others on there. And what I'm going to do is change the way those tangents are. So if you go over here, as you select your tangents, go select tangents to linear. And if you notice, they're going to be now completely a straight line from one to the other. So it should improve the pacing on the feet, because then it's a constant movement rather than slowly going, and it changes the way we see the movement. Notice it improves because now our foot that is on the ground kind of stays a little bit more on the ground, and the other one steps. Let's see, when the other one steps, has a better reference. It still shifts a little bit, so you could maybe start moving that frame a little bit more, you know, maybe a little bit further forward, and update that key, and let's see how it looks. The movement also is a little bit fast, so you don't have, you know, if it slides just a little bit on a fast walk, you don't have to, you know, worry way too much. Okay. It's still sliding a little bit more than I wish. Let's push it back a little bit more. This is a constant process of, you know, tweaking the values as you see it. So just continue editing. Let me shift it a little bit back and update it. It's a little bit sliding, but for the most part it kind of stays in place. So continue tweaking that until you have a placement that is satisfactory for you, and then we move on to the next step. The next step would be then to do that for the rest of the animation, right? So let's go to see what happens if we, instead of 24 frames, we have 48. That will be 2 seconds of animation. So on the time configuration, I'm going to send you into 48, say OK, and let's play it. And you see that he stops, right? So you could either, you know, as I said before, you can either set this key to be the last one, or we can just simply set a last one here. Just be careful if you continue setting keys from second to second, that you don't have that thing that happens with slowing down too much, right? So because the challenge now will be that he walked from here to here on frame 24, so now you have to have kind of like a similar spacing, right, so that it looks believable. So I'm gonna move it to frame 48, I'm sorry, and move him forward and set key. Okay, now we have another key. So let's see how it looks. It looks decent, I think, and we'll have to edit a little bit more the feet. Remember, our tangents once again were changed, and now we have a little bit of a curve on this one, so let's set them back again to linear, okay, because we need to do that just once if you do the first and last key. And let's test it. Oops, sorry, I changed by accident the viewport. So So I think it looks better. So this is one way that you can translate your walk on 3D Studio Max. I would suggest to do one. Let me stop it for a moment. Beginning and end, so that you have a constant movement of that on the keyframe that you set for the dummy object. But I just wanted to show you that you can also do that with other actions. For example, if you have a walk and then you import a sequence of the character falling over on the ground, you can do that on the mixer. Remember that we imported the walk several times, so you could interlace maybe him falling, getting up, and then back to walk. Okay, so that's one idea you can consider. But I hope that this helped, and I look forward to seeing you practicing this next.